Who are some candidates that you think would be very good contenders for the Democratic Party based on this kind of broad spanning, they appeal to the mass consensus?
It is a dog eat dog world on that one. The names that I've heard, Pete Buttigieg, I just don't think he can build a consensus. I think Kamala Harris would be the probably the best choice because she's been sitting in office as a VP. Gavin Newsom, I just don't think he can get it. Gretchen Whitmore has been another one. Those are the four that come to the top of my head. I think they need to raise up a new generation. There's a Bible verse that comes to mind about Joshua raising up a new generation of individuals who can take over and lead. The four that come to mind, I just don't think they're able.
So let's first start with the attempted assassination, which is what it's being investigated as. So with this more recent news, what are your first impressions about like this incident and how it's going to impact the Trump campaign and the Republican Party as a whole?
I think it invigorates them. I think it emboldens them to be more aggressive and forthright in their positions. What I am hoping happens, though, is they're able to capture those disillusioned people who are sort of leaving the Democratic Party because there's a big chunk of them that just aren't happy with the extreme liberalism of the Democratic Party to say this is how we can support you and also be the party for you. What is happening, I'm noticing, is there is a lot more language around small business owners, how we can be, the party for you, deregulation, not just for big business, but deregulation for those small businesses, and capture more of those minority voters who have been traditionally, Democratic Party loyalists, especially in the Black community. There's a sort of an exodus that I'm seeing.
How do you think this attempted assassination will
Yeah.
impact the Democratic Party in general?
What I've seen in the media and sort of some of those individuals who are very pro Democrat and Biden individuals is there's been discussions that one, it was a setup, the assassination wasn't real. Two, don't forget that he's racist. Those are the sort of talking points. And three, that he's disconnected from reality as well. And I think there was a discussion about him not calling the widow of the firefighter that died. And
Yes.
then, there was a fact check that said, yeah, but the RNC has raised $2 million for her. Do you want the $2 million or do you want the phone call? I think that ad hominem attacks on Donald Trump are not going to work. The reason I say that is because most of them are sorely lacking in factual support. They're just sort of these knee-jerk reactions to attacking him. I think what the Democratic Party has to do is demonstrate for the American, the typical middle class American who you're going to drive out to vote, who is feeling disenfranchised and disenchanted as to why Joe Biden is the better candidate.
A lot of pundits have thought that having Tim Scott of South Carolina, Marco Rubio of Florida, someone who is a POC or is a woman as his vice presidential pick would help to sway those minority blocks to kind of go with the Republicans. What are your opinions on that? Do you think that Vance was the correct option, or do you think that the assertion that choosing someone from a minority group will help to bring in the minority group is not necessarily the most accurate thing in the world?
I think the notion that a DEI selection to capture those votes, particularly for an astute person who's voting, will backfire. It can backfire depending on the now. With that being said, it depends on the candidate and the person who's selected, right? I think if JD Vance has the right messaging, and also uses his wife, who is a brown woman, to sort of show the softer, less, because to some people he's deemed as racist and sexist side of him. I think that could go a long way. What JD Vance does have to offer is his story of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. My mom was a crackhead. There was a story made about me on Netflix. I went into the military and I turned my life around. People love those coming of age story, and he's young. So, an under 40 candidate, I've heard some people say, well, he's too junior. So was VP Harris. She was junior too. So I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I do think that the language around him and who he picks to sort of put out in the media could do him good in terms of who he has as the advisors.
What are your opinions on Trump's selection, and how do you think Vance is going to impact Trump's acceptability among more moderate and centrist voters?
That's a great question. It all depends on how he does on the debate platform, right? Versus VP Harris. If he can come down from the sort of what I like to call the Jacob's ladder, top of the Jacob's ladder, and say, I've evolved now that I have got some kids. I would go there and say, now that I have, children, on my belief system regarding abortion. Um, while I am still not for ending the life of an unborn child, I do understand that there are situations and circumstances where a woman should not be forced to bring forth a child where she's been raped, a victim of incest. That's a crime. That in itself is a crime against her body. Yes, we're talking about crime and build it up around crime. That is a crime against her body where someone has raped her and then to double penalize her for bringing forth a child is problematic. I think there's a way to say it in those terms, couch it in those terms around crime. We don't want to commit crimes against women. That's not what I'm here for. I care about the life of the unborn child. I think surrounding that, I think it is short-sighted to be so anti LGBTQIA plus, right? Although they represent a minority, they're a very vocal minority in politics. So I think he has to be careful with being clear that no one should be denied life-saving healthcare, although he doesn't believe in transgenderism, but life-saving healthcare is a whole other thing. They're two different things. Two things can be true at the same time, right? I cannot believe in something, but also say, but I also understand that there's life-saving healthcare, even if I don't personally believe in it.
Do you think that him endorsing that perspective is just going to, further solidify that the platform is, respected by the majority of the party, or is it
Yeah,
going to seem
I
like
think
he's
it helped. Helped. And look, as far as the LGBTQIA, there's a lot of gays and lesbians and transgenders who are Republicans. For finance, based on the finances, right? Based on that piece of it, maybe not, the social stuff, but definitely the fiscal stuff. And even for some people who are devoutly Christian, because I'm devoutly Christian, my views are very nuanced on this subject matter. Am I, going to go out and stand in front of my gay friends and tell them, they're going to hell? No, no, not in a million. In fact, one of my closest gay friends was in my wedding. I mean, I think it's all in how you present the topic, and we've had sensitive subject matter, but I think there's a way to win some of those, even although the platform doesn't speak to that hyper liberal viewpoint on LGBTQIA. I think there's a way to win some of that too. Just have to learn how to build a consensus.
I think that's the
Yeah.
key word of this interview is consensus. I think that's what'll win this election, if I'm not mistaken.
I think that a consensus and there is a way to do it. Maybe look, maybe I'm a trial lawyer, so I talk to juries, so there's a way to sway people to see your viewpoint. It's all in how you do it.
Thank you to Councillor Jamie Wright for sitting down with me today to discuss the state of Republican and Democrat politics, as well as some major incidents in the American politics landscape. For 88.7 FM's Morning Wake Up Call, I'm Cameron Bowden, WRHU.